confidence and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zymet.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Beverly Zymet Show, where being the best you has just gotten easier. My friend today here and guest is Karen Ascarelli, and she's calling in from Trinidad, and she's telling me it's just hotter than heck down there, right?
It definitely is.
Oh, and I tortured her today because she had to shut the window and the door and she doesn't have air conditioning. So she's going to be sweating it for a different reason today. So we're going to have a great time on this little interview. Karen, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do and what got you into this passion of what you're doing?
So I am, first of all, a mother of one adult child. I'm also an avid runner. I always put that in because it's part of who I am.
Okay.
But I was an educator for 22 years in a public school system here in Trinidad. I taught chemistry at up to age 19. I'm still an educator, just not in the public system anymore. An author as well. I've written 2 published books. What else? I'm a speaker, and I have my own not-for-profit organization that's called Project Rare. And Project Rare is it stands for raising awareness on the ripple effect of gun violence. And what I do is I advocate against gun violence and for peace. And the reason why I'm so passionate about that, and as well as women's improvement, is because I went through a very difficult incident about 7 years ago. And that incident changed the entire course of my life. So out of that one incident, I would say I lost my social circles. I had to give up my job. I was physically injured, emotionally damaged, and financially, it was definitely a strain. So that one incident caused a lot of changes in my life, and that is what prompted me to do what I do today, which is to write books that are inspirational, to give inspirational talks, and to promote peace, as well as what I call reflective writing.
You were sharing a little bit with me earlier that, with gun violence, that you were actually a victim to bullets, correct?
Yes, so I was a victim 7 years ago, and that's what changed the course of my life, as I said. So 7 years ago, on Tuesday, the 29th of January, 2013, it was just a day before my elder brother's birthday, and it was 20 days after my 47th birthday that I went for a drive with a friend right here in Trinidad, right in the south of Trinidad, which is where I am from. And my car was held up by criminals. I like to call them bandits, but most people call them criminals. I was held up by them. They surrounded the car. And what happened that night is that they were actually on the run from the police. They had already committed several other crimes prior to meeting up with my car. So they had shot at a couple of people before that. They had stolen some vehicles, and it sounds like a movie because they just kept moving with the police on their trail. And by the time they got to me, we had paused at a minor road before turning on, surrounded the car. They surrounded the car and they shot at the driver. But I moved and I picked up the bullet instead. So what happened was that in that instant, was a lot of craziness. I didn't know what happened. I felt this impact. I saw this, and then the driver just sped off. And even as we were speeding off, they were still firing shots at the car. They were intent on either getting the car or destroying us. So what the police told me after the incident was that what they would normally do is shoot at the driver, get rid of the driver, and take over control of the car. The car is what they wanted. However, I picked up the bullet, which was unfortunate, but fortunate in a sense because we were able to get away from the scene of the crime. But in picking up the bullet, what it did was it blew off my chin completely,
Oh my
almost completely.
gosh.
It was hanging by a thread. And I didn't know how bad it was. I just knew it was bad. And I was also shot in my shoulder, my right shoulder, and my chest. And there was just blood pouring, warm and cloying and fresh smelling. And it was really a very scary moment in my life. The driver didn't realize what had happened until I said, I don't even know how I spoke at that time, but I did.
Oh yeah, no kidding. If your jaw was gone, how?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
And it was fractured. All along here was fractured. I didn't know it. Maybe if I had known, I wouldn't have tried to talk.
Probably so.
I remember saying to him, I think I've been shot. And he looked across and he started to scream and shout. Now, I never did that. And I always attribute my calmness at that point in time to two things. One is that I realized how bad it was and I knew how to conserve my energy. But the second thing was, I think that God would have stepped in at that point and helped me out a lot. Mm-hmm. God was my saving grace at that point in time. So when it happened, and as he kept driving, we met with the police who were chasing the criminals. They were just about 2 streets away. And I was transferred to the police vehicle and they took me to the hospital rather than calling an ambulance. So I was taken to the hospital in a police vehicle. And even as I went, they couldn't believe that I was really shot because I was so quiet. And at one point, while they were transporting me, they took off their sirens and they started going very slowly. And I thought to myself, maybe they think I'm dead because I was so quiet.
Right.
By the time we got to the hospital, so just a little background on myself. I am a divorcee. I didn't mention that. So I have been independent for a very long time. I was divorced about more than 20 years ago. And I remained single and looked after myself and got my own home, my own car and everything. So I've always been known as a very independent, headstrong person. So when we got to the hospital that night, and they brought out a wheelchair and they brought out, somebody wanted to lift me up to take me into the emergency room. I refused. I didn't say anything. I just refused and I walked in.
Oh my gosh, you walked in with these gunshots? Oh my gosh!
And there was just blood pouring all the time. And I heard it from somebody who was there on the night who saw it, somebody who I didn't know, but they saw me that night. And the person was like, oh my God, it was such a sight to see you walking in there with all this blood all over you and your face blown. You know, they were just seeing my face all along here had shrapnel. So it was just blood and shrapnel and bones and whatever, everything you were just seeing, tissue. And he said it was a nightmare to see that night. And there I was walking into the emergency room, of course, not knowing what I looked like,
right?
Not knowing how severe the injury was. And I walked in, they put me on a gurney, and then nothing. At least so it felt to me. It felt as though nothing was happening. But at one point, I remember just thinking to myself, you know, how are my students going to deal with this? Because I had students writing exams in June of that year. This had happened in January. So I was concerned about my students. I was concerned about my family, my son. What would they think? You know, I didn't really consider that I was going to die.
Right.
But what I was told is I had lost so much blood already by the time I got to the hospital that I was very close to die. And at one point, I remember thinking to myself, you know what, I don't know how I'll be able to face people after this. I didn't know what my face looked like, But I knew it was injury to my face, so I was like, how am I going to face people? How am I going to a classroom to teach children with my face distorted and disfigured? Children in years to come wouldn't understand what had happened, and children can be very cruel, very nice, but very cruel, especially when they can't
Right.
relate to something. So all those thoughts passed through my mind, and at that point, I thought I wanted to give up. And there was a nurse there in the room, and apparently, I don't know what she saw, but she came very close to me at that instant when I thought about giving up. And she said to me, she said, "You better don't give up now, after all we have done for you." And I just was like, okay. But I didn't remember them doing anything. I didn't remember what they had done, but
And so you tell me you
apparently they
did all
had
this
done
stuff.
a
I
lot.
don't remember nothing. As far as
Yeah,
I know, you didn't do nothing.
I just kept thinking they had me lying down there waiting for me to die. That's how I was feeling. So,
Right.
yeah. So when she said that, I told myself, I said, I wish I could tell them that my cousin works at the hospital and that she does work in the emergency room at times, but I couldn't say anything. And it was so strange because in that very instant, I heard a voice to my right. And I always think back about it as being a horror story because when I heard it, I just raised up. I was lying down like completely dead, raised up, grabbed onto the person's hand, looked straight into her eyes, and didn't recognize her. It took me a few seconds before I realized it really was my cousin. And so I just kind of shook my head, and instantly, I'm not joking, right away, things started to happen. Right away, they came and they started to cut the clothes off of me. They started to, saw people rushing around getting equipment together and just getting me ready to go in for surgery. So it was a good thing that she was there, and it was a good thing that I realized that she was there because I don't think things would have progressed as quickly as they did once they realized that she was my cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad that it had to get to that point, but that is how it was. So once they realized who I was and who she was in relation to me, and things started happening, they wanted to get the number for a relative, which I didn't want to give. I didn't want anybody coming in to see me as I was. I mean, I'm sure you could relate to that.
Of course. Yes.
So eventually they got my phone and they got numbers. So they called. They got through to my elder brother and they got through to my son. My brother got there in time, and he got there in time to whisper into my ear that he was seeing me as he always knew me. And those very small words were very powerful words because it kind of gave me some reassurance that things weren't so bad. People would still love me afterwards because that was a concern of mine. And
Right.
my son didn't get there until I went in for emergency surgery. So right after my brother came, they took me up to the operating theater, and I underwent emergency surgery. When I got up the next day, I was attached to almost every piece of equipment I could think about. There were tubes everywhere, and they even had to, I don't know if you can see, but they even had to make a cut here. And normally they would do it across, but because of the circumstances, they ended up doing it vertically to put in something called a tracheostomy. And
Mm-hmm.
that was put in to help me to breathe better and also to prevent my tongue from collapsing, from going down into my throat and strangling me because I didn't realize it, but my tongue had also been macerated. So it was a tongue, it was this, it was a lot.
Yeah.
So
No
this whole
kidding.
this whole area here was a mess. So they did whatever they had to do. I don't think they removed any bullets because when I asked a couple of weeks later, they didn't want to say anything. But all they said to me was what was important that night was to save my life, and I was okay with that. So after the surgery, I was attached, as I said, to all these different things, including a nasogastric tube. So I was being fed through my nostrils because I couldn't eat, and not being able to eat went on for 9 months after the
Oh
incident.
my goodness.
So I was on a liquid diet for 9 months, and if you want
Oh
to
yeah, I
lose
guess
weight,
so. I mean, you're thinking all this jaw. Yeah, you wouldn't be
yeah,
able to chew, right? It's like, oh yeah, that makes
yes.
sense.
And not only that, in the beginning, because there was all this space here, I imagined if anything went in, it would just fall right back out.
In this
That's
end and
how
out
I
this
imagined.
end,
In and
right?
out, nothing going down. So what they did that night, they just kind of snipped off whatever was holding the chin in place, and they just held everything and pulled it to one side to kind of close it back up. So that's why you find like the whole thing looks twisted when you
Right.
look at it now. So it really is twisted. So this chin is not really my chin. This chin was something else. Yeah. And this piece here, this is actually my shoulder. So
Oh,
they eventually, yeah, when I did the reconstructive surgery some months down the line, they took skin from here was actually attached to my shoulder like this for 3 weeks. So that was when they did that graft. So I had a skin graft done. I had a split skin graft from my thigh, and I had to do a hip graft, bone graft from my hip to get build back up everything here. Plus they had to put in plates. So, but all that came after. For the 3 weeks after the incident, I couldn't speak at all. There was no talking.
mm-hmm.
Every communication was through writing. I could not talk. And part of the reason for that was the injury, but another part of the reason was because of the tracheostomy. And when it goes in, if it's working properly, usually it touches the voice box so that you can't speak anyway. So for that time, all my communication was by writing. And I'll skip out a lot of the gory stuff, although I did say a lot already.
Well, you know,
But
it's fascinating listening to your story. And hey, if anybody out there can relate to this, you know, let us know. Let us know what you're thinking here. Have you had that experience, or someone that you've known had an experience like this? You know, and what I'm finding intriguing, you know, at the first part of your story here, you know, I mean, it sounds like something I would do. Your eyes, I don't need nobody to carry me. Right? I can walk on my
exactly.
own. Right? But again, the thoughts that are running through your head, you know, like, oh my gosh, I can't see it. I don't know how bad it is or whatever's going on. And you're thinking, will they love me after? Will anybody, you know, like what I look like? All these different things, you know, crazy thoughts that, why would you have a thought like that? You know, it's like you would be thinking, am I going to die or live? Or, you know, who's the idiot that did this to me? Why was I there? You know, all these others, you know, again, it's interesting where our minds take us, you know, at
It
the
really is.
time of you know, crisis, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I didn't tell you this before, but one of the things that passed through my mind too was that this was going to be in the news the next day. And
Oh,
what, yeah, because I thought about how many people would know about this.
yeah. And like, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna know
And
about this.
it's really where the mind takes you. Everybody's going to know. So
Yeah.
it's strange. And there was a lot of delayed reaction. So all those things that you were saying, like, why am I not dead? Am I going to live? Um, who did this? Why was I there? Why did this happen? All those questions came, but they came 9 months after the incident. This is no joke.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they came 9 months after. So what I when I thought about it, I told myself maybe what happened was that I focused on the physical healing for those first 9 months.
Sure.
Because what happened during that time was they had to wire the jaw shut to stabilize it. And when they did that, one of the doctors, the one who did the final reconstructive surgery, he thought that it would have been stabilized enough that they could take out the wires and it would heal and I wouldn't have to do reconstructive surgery. That didn't happen. When they took out the wires, it started collapsing again. So they had to, my jaw was actually broken 3 times in all. The first time when I was shot, the second time was to do the first wiring, and the third time was to do the rewiring of the jaws. And then finally, they took it out after the reconstructive surgery. So reconstructive surgery was where they had to build back up the base and all that. And I also had to do some plastic surgery, which is where they covered up all this. So, needless to say, during that time, because our healthcare here in the public system is free, I didn't have to worry for the first couple weeks about payments. But once I got into the reconstructive surgery, that would have had to be done privately because we didn't have some of the plates available in the public hospital. So what that meant is that I would have to go into my lifelong savings. And as a teacher, single parent,
Yeah, not too much
I
left
had
in there, is there?
lots of love. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so whatever I had to go back into doing this, the good thing was that I had insurance so that I did get back parts of it. I didn't get back all of it, but I did get back some. However, because I had to stay away from teaching for more than a year, what happened was that after the first 3 months, I got full pay. Then the next 3 months, I got half my salary. And after 6 months, I got nothing. So, 6 months after the incident, I had to start living off of whatever little savings I did have that didn't go into the surgery. And 1 year after the incident, I had a choice to make. I was given the choice to take retirement on medical grounds. And I took it because I still hadn't recuperated fully at that point in time. Actually, I had surgeries done up till about 3 years after the incident. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
was,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
so
could see that.
it took a long time. And as I told you, 9 months after the incident, after the majority of the physical work was done, then then my brain kicked in. Then I started worrying and thinking, and all sorts of thoughts went through my mind. And I started to slip into depression. And when I realized, well, I didn't realize at first, but I started not being able to sleep. I started having nightmares. I started sleeping throughout the day. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to go anywhere. And what really broke it for me was when my mom took me for a drive one evening, and she didn't know it, but we passed close to where the incident had happened.
Oh.
And I held on to the car. I didn't tell her anything. I just held on to the handle in the car, and I squeezed it so tight, and I started to get upset, nauseous. I was feeling nauseated. And when that happened, I realized, okay, something not too right. And then 2 days later, I went into a public office to try to arrange my national insurance business. And somebody asked me how I was feeling, and I couldn't answer her. I just started to cry. I cried for half an hour nonstop, and I just wanted to scream out aloud. And that was when I realized, I think I need some kind of
Yeah,
yeah,
no
some
kidding.
professional help. So I spoke to my doctors, and they sent me to the public hospital. They sent me to their psychiatric unit, and I got help through that. And so I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I was given both counseling and medical treatment. I Because of my chemistry background, I was very cautious about taking the medicine. I did take it, but I eventually weaned myself off of it. I read up on how to do it, and I did wean myself off of it. And after about maybe 2 months, I did. Because by that time, I was feeling a lot better. I was dealing better. I was still sleeping a lot and all that. And then suddenly one morning, I just got up and I realized I had this inspiration and I had to write my book. So I started writing, and I would work from 6 o'clock in the morning till late in the night. I was just like driven. I was
Yeah.
passionate. I was driven. I was just going, 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 and I had to get it done. And while I had started writing before, and I had started writing just to get it off my chest so I didn't have to tell anybody anything, but what I had written was, to me, never made any sense. When I started to write the book, it made a lot more sense because what I was doing now is I was using the story to teach people lessons out, not teach people, but to share the lessons that I had learned out of the incident. And so the book just flowed. Within a week and a half, I had the first draft done. That was amazing to me. I couldn't believe that I had done it so quickly.
Right.
And So that was my first book, and I got that done. And then from there, once the book was out, people started to want me to come to speak when they heard the story. So I started doing the inspirational speaking. And I always say that I'm naturally shy. I'm naturally shy and introverted. And so public speaking, inspirational speaking is really not something I envisioned myself doing. I do it, but I'm not that good at it. I try. The story itself is powerful enough to carry me sometimes, but as a speaker, I have a long way to go. But I am trying, and so out of that came other opportunities, and things just started moving ahead, and I had a clearer direction, and it's still evolving every day. But I realized at some point in 2017 that it was my duty. I felt it was my duty to start advocating against gun violence, because here in Trinidad we do have a problem with gun violence, and it has to do with the with us being the hub for narco trafficking in the area. So you find that things from the States and things from Venezuela and the nearby drug-related countries, things, everything goes through our country.
Oh my
So we have
gosh.
drugs coming in, and with the drugs come the guns,
Right.
because they want to protect their drugs. So you find that we have that problem here in Trinidad. Anybody, anywhere could get a gun easily. They don't even need it on paper. Legally, we do need a license. But you could go down to the corner of the street, and you could go and talk to the guys on the street there, and you could get a gun to buy if you want it.
I
And
think you're finding that just about in any country as
anywhere.
well, but
Yeah,
so it's pretty simple, to
it's
get one.
very easy. Yeah, you
Right.
just have to want to do it, and you will get it.
Right. Well, it's a very good thing that you're
So
doing down
I
there.
realized that I needed to start speaking up against the gun violence. Yeah, so that's how I started that. And then I wrote my second book. And the second book was it was all about how I was able to move from falling right down to almost ground zero, to rock bottom.
Oh, yeah,
Back up
exactly.
from there. Yeah. So that's basically the story. There are lots of things I left out, so you can feel free to ask questions. But that's basically where it got to. And when I got up to that point, I realized that while I was speaking, while I do the speaking, there are a lot of people who come up to me, and they have stories that they like to share too. So they would tell me what happened with them. It gives them the courage to come and open up to somebody who they had never met before.
Mhm.
And I realized that, right here in Trinidad, we have so many inspirational people that they all need a platform to share. They just need the right platform. And so what I did was I I contacted people who would be willing, who I knew liked writing, and who I knew had a good story to tell. And we decided to get together, and I'm working on the third book, and the third book is an anthology of short inspirational stories told by Trinidadian people. So that one should come out later this year, hopefully by July, August, September, somewhere there, depending
There
on
you go.
the whole quarantine situation.
That's really nice to hear that, because again, it's that story to get out. It gives other people hope,
Yes.
that there is, and there may be people early in their stage like your fight, for 9 months, just not being able to really exist other than in that hospital bed, with all these tubes all over the place, and not be able to talk, not be able to eat, that there is really light at the end of the tunnel, and to keep on going and keep on going. And you're fortunate that you had family, and friends behind you to keep that little go to keep on going, because there's some people out there that don't have that, and that's kind of sad when you don't have others around you, for that. But it's an amazing story, but be able to bring people together in that format and be able to share their stories in a book, with other people of like minds. And, I know different people who have done that on different incidences. I had a gal who did a story with autistic children, and her challenge and her story, having autistic children, and then meeting up with other parents of autistic children, because everyone is unique and different, but there's that common ground, just for them to have a place to express that and put it in book form and be able to say, wow, we're making a difference. Because those stories like yours, regardless whether it's gun violence or autism or anything else, these stories help awareness and help others be able to say, I have a voice and I have a
Yes.
message. And that's kind of what I built this show on, was to help women. We have men on the show, but it was started for women to have that voice of expression and becoming that best them. So when you look at the story, that you had and what your life was prior to being a teacher and everything, and what happened after the event, and where your life has taken you to this journey, you're still a teacher, but you're teaching something completely different than what you taught before. But the message is powerful. The
Yeah.
message is powerful.
You mentioned about having the support and all that, and I think it would be remiss of me not to mention that I was able to deal with things at the hospital because of faith. I know that a lot of people have a problem with faith sometimes, but in my case, I can tell you that turning to God at that time, I was always a Christian, but being able to turn to know that God was there for me during that time, that was one of my lifelines. And even when the incident happened, I would say one scripture verse, the only thing I could remember at that time, and I would say it over and over in my head. Whether people choose to believe or not, it's up to them.
Hmm.
But I know that for me, that was what gave me the courage to move on. It was what gave me the peace of mind that I could heal, begin to heal, because you need peace of mind to heal.
Oh
And
gosh, yes.
even while I was at the hospital, a couple of days after they had moved me out of ICU and I was back into a ward, and while I was on the ward, I couldn't sleep, even though I was given sleeping tablets and morphine and everything, but I just could not sleep. And I remember getting up one night and staring through the window, and I was just thinking about what had happened. And although I never questioned who and why did this, who did this to me and why they did it, what I know is that at that night I was able to come to a point of forgiveness. And I think that was a key element in my recovery, in being able to move forward and
Right.
in being able to want to help other people to prevent something like this from happening to other people. And that to me is one of the most critical junctures in a healing process. And what I've learned in sharing against gun violence is that wherever I go, I take handouts with me. The one handout that always finishes is the one on forgiveness.
That is,
Because
oh, it
people
just
just
gives me
grasp
chills.
it.
Yeah, and that is so important. You hear people who have gone through different traumas where maybe a loved one was killed, and they're in a court battle, or is now a vegetarian, a vegetable or something, or they're paraplegics, or just different extremes. But one of the things that they said, whether they were the victim or the family of the victim, right, that when they began to forgive is when they started living again. And so I think that is very important and a very key message to understand, that no matter what happens in your life, no matter what trauma, major or minor, or however you perceive that trauma, that's real. It's the forgiveness that really matters, because it's like you don't know. You just don't know. And sometimes you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and other times you're in the wrong place at the right time, or you're in the right place at the wrong time. You know, you've got so many scenarios here. But that forgiveness just makes everything just like surrender, so that now you can come from your heart and begin that healing process. So to recognize that early, you know, in your adventure there, and be able to say, I need to forgive. I need to forgive. And to have that knowing and that feeling of, I will get through this. I will heal. You know, you have nothing but time on your side. And again, having faith, you know, having faith, that's something to hold on to, you know, and it's real. It's real.
And another thing with the faith that really helped me through, during that time, I told you I couldn't sleep. So my brother, my elder brother, he had brought an MP4 player for me, and he had a collection, wide range of music. But there was one song in particular that I would listen to, and I played that song over and over all the time. That was the only one I listened to, and it was the only one that I could fall asleep with.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know this singer. He's a gospel singer. His name is Don Moen.
Oh, yes,
And
I've heard him.
right,
Yes,
so
I
I
have.
listened to one song by him, and it was "Thank You, Lord," and that was another one of my lifelines. So it was prayer, it was "Thank You, Lord," and it was the forgiveness. So those three things, the prayer, "Thank You, Lord," and forgiveness, those three things really helped me. In terms of the support from the family, it was amazing, because I'll tell you something that I didn't share with you. Just before the incident, like, my father passed away in 2009. And between 2009 and 2012, I had no relationship with my mother and my brothers.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. So I actually isolated myself. So remember, I'm an independent, headstrong
You're
person, right?
right.
Yeah. Things happened, and I just said, look, that's it. Have nothing to do with anybody. The only person who was in my life still was my son. So just to show you, you know, things really worked out nicely. I didn't have support during that time, but when the incident happened, my family also were able to step in. I don't know how, by the grace of God, they stepped in, and I know I couldn't make it without them. So
Right.
for those people who don't have support, maybe in terms of family, there is always support somewhere. You just have
Right.
to reach out. Yeah, once you reach out, you will get support from people.
Right. You
Yeah.
know, I come from a big family. There's 11 of us, right? And
Wow.
we're actually very, very close. You know, we've had our differences. There's been battles. I mean, come on, siblings do have battles. But,
Yes.
you know, and, you know, you just kind of let things heal. Again, it goes back into that forgiveness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the heat of an argument, even in the heat of something, you know, and it hasn't all been rectified yet, if something happens to any one of us, right? Doesn't matter. Everything else is thrown out the window, and we're there. 100% spot on, and it's like nobody's gonna get near you, right? So we do join forces, you know, and you know, so when you're down at the bottom, so to speak, you know, at your lowest point, regardless if it's, you know, in a trauma situation like your own, you know, Karen, or if it's an emotional thing, if it's a family member, like say if something would have happened to your son, you know, in a situation like that, that everybody all of a sudden rallies around you and all other things are forgotten. That's just the past, and it brings you back into that family unit, into that, you know, unit. And unfortunate, there are some instances that don't happen that way, but in a lot of cases it takes something of really traumatic things to bring that family back, saying, whoa, we've really lost too much time. It's not worth it. It's really
It's
not
not.
worth it, right?
It really isn't.
Yeah.
And it took this for me to realize that.
Yeah, and and it doesn't matter if you're on the giving or receiving end of it, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So
So,
so that having their support was good. And one of the things I ask people to do, I know that people could be introverted and sometimes you're alone and all that, but it's important to develop relationships before something happens, so that if
exactly.
something happens, you could be a support for somebody else, or they can be a support for you. So it's important that
Right.
you don't have to have 100 relationships, but you need to have at least a few close ones, and get involved in some group or something, a supportive group of people with similar likings or hobbies or something. But it's important to build that, and that was something that I never did in my younger years.
Right.
So when this happened, although colleagues came out and visited and whatever, at the end of it, when I went back home out of the hospital, the only people who were there were my family members.
Right.
So it's important to develop. And I like to talk about that because I know how hard it was for me. So I don't want somebody else having to go through that.
Yeah.
And what I forgot to mention to you, you mentioned it, but I forgot to tell you this, that the organization that I started, the tagline for it, I think I mentioned it to you when we spoke before, it's transforming hurt into hope.
Yes.
So yeah, and so
Yes.
I like that because it's like, no matter what you go through, and you will go through something, we
You'll
all
go
have
through
to go through
something.
that.
Yes.
There is always going to be that beacon of light at the end. There's always going to be that hope.
Right.
Yeah, so that hope is always there, no matter what trials you may have gone through.
Yeah, there'll always be someone there for you, and in a lot of cases, sometimes the person that is there at that moment is totally unexpected. Someone you would have never ever thought would be the one that would be there when the chips were down.
True, that could happen too.
Yeah,
Yes,
I've seen that happen on numerous occasions where
that.
in your wildest
Yeah,
dreams you
I saw
never
it for
would have
myself.
thought that that would have been the person that showed up in that time that was most needed. And that shows real friendship, you know. Where are your friends when the chips are down? You know, when you're there in need. I have a friend right now going through some major stuff, with her husband, where he is now paraplegic. He was a Vietnam vet, exposed to Agent Orange. All of his kids ended up with problems in the genetic strands in his grandchildren, and he had an incident a year and a half ago that he fell and he got injured, and now he's a paraplegic. And you talk about your life changing. I mean, like that fast. And so, where are those people? Where are those friends now? Where are the people that say, hey, we're here for you, we're here for you? They're gone. A year and a half later,
Mhm.
They're gone. So you have, maybe 3 or 4 really close friends, and then that family being there. It's hard times, and when you're in a position like that, and yourself going through that, the person that was the victim, shall we say, or the outcome of a situation, you know, it puts you in a position of being vulnerable and being dependent upon everyone else, and coming from that position, you being this independent woman, I can do it myself. I don't need you. I can do it. Oh my God, I can relate to that one, right? It's like
So
nobody can do it as good as me, right? And then all of a sudden, here you are at the mercy of everyone else around you, right? that
yeah,
that can be that can be a very tough lesson to learn. So if you're listening out here and you're getting this, build those relationships like Karen said. build those relationships to have that. Don't make yourself to the point like you don't need someone. And I think being in this pandemic situation that's going on in the world today is we're learning how important it really is to be around other people, to have people that you care about around you, and have those relationships and those connections, because people need people, and it's really important to have
Yeah.
those relationships.
And even though we can't get close to each other because of the situation with the pandemic, we are seeing where we still need to reach out to people. We still need to be talking to people. We still need to have that
Yes,
connection regardless. So we may not
regardless.
be physically connected, but we still have to be connected at some level.
Right.
And a lot of people might have been experiencing what they call the cabin fever, getting depressed and all that. Yeah, and sometimes the only thing that helps is to reach out and chat with somebody. It's happened to me, so I know that for a fact.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and not having friends and not building those relationships during that time. Um, what I have found for myself is that the people who I thought would have been part of my life for always until the end of my life, those people stayed back in that part of my life. I consider this my second life now. And
Right.
in my second life, I've had to build relationships from scratch. I've had to start over. So I've found that whereas I might have lost a lot, I am gaining more. And I'm finding that these new
Right.
relationships are so much more meaningful because I understand now how vital it is. So
Oh,
that could be, something to think about too.
that's it. Yes, it could. That right there was a great message, because it is about that. And you have to look at it from that standpoint. I mean, you were knocking on death's door, right? And your faith and your belief system, God saying, "Hey, you get your little butt right back down here. You ain't done. We got lots of work for you to do, young lady," right? So you ain't coming up here. You're sticking around down here. So you're going to get it right this time. So to be able to like have that, like you said, second chance. So it's a second life to begin to look, because you had a lot of months laying there being, in the reality of who you are and who you're going to be now, because life as you knew it is different. Just like what we're going on now, everybody on the planet is life as we knew it is not going to be what we
Yeah.
know it. So it's living in the present and being what that is. So be able to have that second chance, that opportunity to say, wow, step back and be grateful. Again, here we talk about that word. Be grateful for what we have and hang on to that hope for the newness of what is to come, but stay in the present, because the present is all you have, and make the most of that present. Because if you're not living in the moment, you're dying in the moment. And there's too much life out there to live. And having that second chance, and just listening to your story today, Karen, oh my gosh, it's like, yeah, yeah. This is a real life second chance story, shall we say.
Very nice second chance. And I didn't share this with you, and this is not boasting, but this is really to show your listeners, because your theme is being the best you.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the work that I started doing against gun violence, what happened was a lot of amazing things happened. I spoke on different platforms, as I told you, and one of the platforms that I spoke on was Tertiary Institute, our local university. I was able to have a voice at one of their forums, one of their meetings, and somebody who was present from the UNDP heard what I was saying, and apparently she liked what she heard, and she nominated me for one of the BBC. BBC has a program called BBC Outlook Inspirations. And this person nominated me for that. And in 2018, I was selected as one of 20 of their Outlook Inspiration nominees. Now, I didn't make it to the first three, but for me, coming from a small island like Trinidad,
Right.
not really having any kind of great accomplishments, having that was really something for me. And it is something I share simply because I think that, other people hearing this could aspire to so much more as well. There's so many
Right.
opportunities out there. All we have to do is not let anything hold us back. We just keep focusing on what we have to do and focusing on being the best that you are, the best that you are at what you are doing, whatever it may be. And that was a high point for me after this whole thing. It kind of just brought everything home, sealed it,
Right.
made it all worthwhile.
But and that's great, and it is so true because we all do have accomplishments, and to be recognized because it is all about being recognized, and when you look at different businesses, especially MLM network marketing businesses, right, is they recognize those accomplishments. Oh, you reach this level, we're going to call you this, and we're going to give you this little bonus thing, right? And you reach this level. So it is that recognition. You go on stage and you walk across stage, and they give you this little placard or whatever it is. People really need that recognition, and kudos off to you, Karen. This story was so touching and so beautiful. And I am so grateful that you came here and shared it with the world. And come on, everybody out there, comment below here. Where do you relate with this story? Share some of your stories with us, little insights. It's awesome. And you know what? Reach out to Karen. She's going to be putting these books together where she's got stories of inspirational things that have happened where people can share those stories. You know what? Reach out to her, let her know you want to be in one of those books, and she can have a whole library full of them, right? That would be awesome.
Awesome indeed.
Yeah, yeah. So, Kara, thank you so much for being here. Again, it's been a pleasure talking with you. And we're going to call this a wrap today. And it's been a pleasure and an honor. It's time to go out there, be that best you that you can be. And Kara and I are going to be the best we that we can be. Because you know what? It doesn't get much better than this story we heard today. Thank you, Karen, for being on the show. And we'll see every one of you on another show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome. What?